Anthony van Dyck. B. Antwerp, 1599. D. London, 1641. Apart from Rubens, in whose Antwerp workshop he served at the beginning of his brilliant career, Van Dyck was the greatest Flemish painter of the 17th century. His aristocratic portraits won him a European reputation and were particularly influential in England, where he spent much of his career. Precociously talented, Van Dyck was apprenticed at the age of just 10. He was strongly influenced by Rubens, although his style was less muscular, tending more towards exquisite sensitivity. Van Dyck also greatly admired Titian, and avidly studied his work when he lived in Italy from 1621 to 1627. In these early years, he was in demand for his paintings of religious and mythological subjects, as well as for portraits. But for the last decade of his life, as court painter to King Charles I of England, his work consisted almost entirely of portraiture. Lifeline. 1599, born in Antwerp, 1618, enrolled as master in Antwerp Painters Guild, working with Rubens, 1621 to 27, lives in Italy, working mainly in Genoa, 1627, returns to Antwerp, 1632, settles in England, knighted by Charles, 1640, marries Mary Ruthven, lady-in-waiting to the Queen. 1641, dies in London, aged 42. Charles I on horseback. This is the most majestic of all of Van Dyck's portraits of the king. C. 1636, oil on canvas, 367 by 292 centimeters, National Gallery, London, UK. The rest on the flight into Egypt, virgin with partridges. This popular religious subject is given an unusual treatment, with dancing putty, cherubs, entertaining the Holy Family, and the traditional choir of angels replaced by flying partridges. Sunflowers and a parrot are further quirky additions. The painting may have been created for Charles I's wife, Queen Henrietta Maria, and the mixture of Catholic and classical imagery may originate in the masks, royal entertainment with dance, poetry, and costumes and lavish stage sets held at Charles's court. Early 1630s, oil on canvas. 215 by 285 centimeters, Hermitage, St. Petersburg, Russia. Anthony van Dyck, who while he lived gave immortality to many. Translation of the Latin inscription, ordered by Charles on Van Dyck's monument. Lord John and Lord Bernard Stuart. This magnificent double portrait is characterized by a languid, aristocratic elegance. The teenage brothers are differentiated by their poses, their positioning, the older brother slightly above the younger, and by the contrasting warm gold and brown and cool blue and silver of their dazzling cavalier costumes. Both died a few years later in the English Civil War. C. 1638, oil on canvas, 238 x 146 centimeters, National Gallery, London, UK. Closer look. Dazzling elegance. Van Dyck's aristocratic sitters are often shown with slender, elegantly drooping hands here. Lord Bernard is holding one of his kid gloves, and its fingers extend the graceful, rhythmic line of his left hand. The glove's pale kid leather is set against shimmering blue satin and white lace, with each different texture brought alive by Van Dyck's breathtaking brushwork. Jacob Jordaens. B. Antwerp, 1593, D. Antwerp, 1678. After the death of Rubens, Jordaens became the leading painter in Flanders. His often boisterous Baroque style shows a huge debt to Rubens, whom he often assisted, even when he was running a large and successful workshop of his own in Antwerp. However, his figure types tend to be coarser than those of Rubens. A versatile and prolific artist, Jordaens produced mythological, genre, and religious works as well as portraits, etchings, and tapestries. Like Rubens, Jordaens spent most of his life in Antwerp, but he received commissions from across Europe. Although he never visited Italy, the strong contrasts of light and shade in his works show the influence of Caravaggio. Late in life, Jordaens converted from Catholicism to Calvinism. He continued to work for Catholic clients, although his painting became more subdued. Lifeline. 1593, born in Antwerp, 1607, begins training with Adam van Noort, 1616, marries Van Noort's daughter, enters the Antwerp Painters Guild, 1621, becomes head of the guild, 1636–37 assists Rubens with paintings for Philip IV of Spain's hunting lodge, c. 1655 converts to Calvinism, 1678 dies in Antwerp. The Holy Family and St. John the Baptist. This dramatically lit work may have been inspired by Caravaggio's Madonna of the Rosary, 7607. 1620–25, oil and panel, 123 by 94 centimeters, National Gallery, London, UK. Satyr with peasants. This scene from Aesop's Fables was one of Jordaens' favorite subjects, and he painted it a number of times. The strong lighting, ruddy coloring, and earthly figures are typical of his work. 1620, oil on canvas, 171 by 194 centimeters, Gemälde Gallery Altemeister, Kassel, Germany. Franz Snyders. The Antwerp, 1579, the Antwerp, 1657. The finest animal artist of his day, the Flemish painter Frans Snyders was often called upon by fellow artists, including Rubens, to paint the animals, fruit, and flowers in their paintings. Rubens sometimes returned the favor by painting figures in Snyders' pictures. The two men were close friends, and Snyders was an executor of Rubens' will. Snyders collaborated in a similar way with other artists, including Van Dyck, Jordaens, and his brother-in-law Cornelis de Vos. The poulterer's shop. Snyders painted still lives as well as animal scenes. The figures here were added by one of Rubens' workshop. 1612–15, oil on canvas, 188 by 152 centimeters, National Museum, Cardiff, UK. Adriaen Brouwer. Jordaens, 16056, de Antwerp, 1638. Providing an important link between Flemish and Dutch art, the Flemish painter Adriaen Brouwer popularized a new form of humorous, low-life genre painting in both countries. Brouwer spent some years in Holland, where he probably trained with Frans Hals, and influenced artists such as Adrian van Ostade. Though his subjects were coarse, his technique was delicate and much admired by contemporaries, such as Rubens and Rembrandt, both of whom collected his works. Peasants quarreling. Brouwer's popular low-life genre scenes often featured grotesquely caricatured peasants brawling in rundown taverns, but they are painted with a delicate touch. Private collection. Jan Brueghel. B. Brussels, 1568, D. Antwerp, 1625. Jan Brueghel was the second son of the great Peter, peasant, Brueghel. He had a meticulous, almost miniaturist style, and was nicknamed Velvet Brueghel, perhaps because of his skill at painting delicate textures. He specialized in painting lush, detailed woodland scenes and still lives, especially flower paintings. He often collaborated with other artists, including his friend Rubens. Large bouquet of flowers in a wooden tub. Brueghel's flower paintings were highly prized by his contemporaries. 1606–2007, oil on panel, 98 x 73 centimeters, Kunsthistorisches Museum, Vienna, Austria. David Teniers. B. Antwerp, 1610, D. Brussels, 1690. The son-in-law of Jan Brueghel, and the most celebrated member of a family of Flemish painters, Teniers the Younger was a hugely popular and prolific artist. He is best known for his genre scenes, some which show the influence of Brouwer, although they are more refined. Employed in Brussels as court painter and keeper of pictures by Archduke Leopold Wilhelm, Teniers also made paintings of the galleries housing the Archduke's famous art collection. The dentist Teniers treats the scene of a peasant visiting the dentist with restraint and sympathy. The glistening bottles and pots have been painted with great delicacy. 1652, oil on panel, 33 by 47 centimeters, Manchester Art Gallery, UK. Frans Hals. B. Antwerp, 1582–83, D. Haarlem, 1666. One of the greatest and most original of all portrait painters, Hals brought his sitters to life with dashing, virtuoso brushwork and an uncanny ability to capture fleeting expressions. Almost all of his 300 or so works are portraits. The first great Dutch artist of the 17th century, he brought a new vitality and realism to Dutch painting and revolutionized the staid, formal portraiture of the day. Hals was born in Antwerp, but spent most of his life in Haarlem. Despite being in demand there for individual and group portraits, he was plagued by money troubles. Indeed, most of the few facts known about his life relate to domestic and financial crises. 1. Gypsy girl. This shows the bold, sketchy lifeline. 1582-83 born in Antwerp, the son of a clothworker. C. 1585 family moves back to his father's native Haarlem. 1610 enters the Haarlem. 1615 first wife dies. 1616 receives his first major commission, banquet of the officers of the St. George Civic Guard Company. 1617 marries his second wife. They have 8 children, 5 of whom become painters. 1624 paints the Laughing Cavalier. 1654 sells his belongings to settle his debt with a baker. 1664 is destitute, living off charity. Paints Regentesses of the Old Men's Almshouse. 1666 dies in poverty. Gypsy girl. This shows the bold, sketchy freedom of Hals's technique. The subject is probably a prostitute rather than a gypsy. C. 1628-30, oil on panel, 58x32 cm, Louvre, Paris, France. The Laughing Cavalier. This is one of the most famous portraits in the world. Lit from the left, and set against a plain wall onto which his shadow falls, this unidentified character seems to leap out at the viewer. An air of immediacy is created by his swaggering pose and expression. Hand on hip, he turns his glance, slightly downwards, towards us. Despite the painting's title, he is not laughing. 1624, oil on canvas, 83 by 67 cm, Wallace Collection, London, UK. Closer look. The sitter's age. Although we do not know the sitter's name, we do know his age. The inscription on the back wall tells us, in Latin, that he was 26 when the portrait was painted, in 1624. Embroidery details. Whereas much of the sitter's costume is painted in broad, free strokes, Hals picks out the embroidery on his chest and sleeve with nimble precision. The embroidered motifs, which include winged arrows and bees, are emblems of love. Banquet of the officers of the St. George Civic Guard Company. In his first major commission, and the first of his celebrated Civic Guard paintings, Hals reveals his skill at bringing freshness and vitality to a group portrait. 1616, oil on canvas, 175 by 324 cm, Frans Hals Museum, Haarlem, Netherlands. Regentesses of the Old Men's Almshouse. Painted when Hals was in his 80s, this subdued group portrait is a poignant, moving image of old age. The painting behind the Regentesses may show the Good Samaritan, illustrating their charitable role. 1664, oil on canvas, 171 by 250 cm, Frans Hals Museum, Haarlem, Netherlands. His paintings are imbued with such force and vitality that he seems to define nature herself with his brush. Theodorus Trevilius, a Haarlem schoolmaster who essayed for a portrait by Hals,